Good afternoon once again, and welcome to Public Protector briefing a bit late. My name is Khalalelo Masibi. I'm the spokesperson for the Public Protector, and I'll be chairing this afternoon session. I will start by introducing the panel. Next to me is the Public Protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela. And the Protector is Mr. Themba Mthethwa, the Chief Executive. And on my far left is Mr. Risenga Maruma, the Chief of Staff in the Office of the Public Protector. As usual, I'm going to hand over to the Public Protector to address you. And after she's addressed you, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. And there'll also be an opportunity for one-on-one interviews afterwards. And you'll also get copies of the Public Protector's statement before you leave. I will now hand over to the Public Protector.
Thank you, Program Director. Members of the media, fellow South Africans, we apologize for starting late. Greetings on behalf of the Public Protector South Africa team. And happy Women's Month to all of the women here and beyond. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. The late Kenyan Nobel Peace Laureate Wangari Maathai once said, I quote, "There are opportunities even in the most difficult moment," close quote. As the Public Protector team, we have called you to join us in conversation today because we believe that we are going through a difficult moment regarding the role of this office. We also believe that there are opportunities for finding common ground. The purpose of my engagement with you today and the country as South Africa's Public Protector is to do the following. One, clarify our understanding of the architecture of our country's constitutional democracy and the place of the Public Protector in such architecture. Two, explain our standard investigation process from beginning to following up on remedial action. Three, briefly take you through the history of our fruitful engagement with the presidency on remedial action over the years. Four, request external actors to respect and support internal processes within the state, including interaction between various organs of state. No problem is insurmountable when there is a will to solve it. The starting point, though, is to acknowledge that there is a problem. The second step is to accept that we cannot hope to get different results from our actions if our actions remain unchanged. Maybe I should repeat that. We cannot hope to get different results from our actions if our actions remain unchanged. I hope you'll agree with me that the leaking and publishing of confidential information, particularly communication between a constitutional institution and the head of state, is a problem for any country. Being advised that a senior politician leaked the document to the media makes this an even bigger problem. In my respectful view, the hysteria that has followed not only compounds the problem, but is also symptomatic of more underlying problems. particularly regarding issues of trust, common decency, and rational discourse. I'm particularly concerned over statements attributed to certain individuals outside the state that seem to suggest that my office ought to be respected and presumably its dignity upheld only if I, as a public protector, behave in a manner they consider appropriate and interpret my mandate the way they claim to understand it. I'm comforted by the knowledge that the problems we have, if you agree that we do have problems, neither represent a crisis nor are they a novelty. Advocate Bagwa had to issue a media release on the 10th of October 1999 following what he termed intemperance in the House bodes ill for the rule of law. I must also say that we are far from the crisis that ensued when President Kruger termed judicial scrutiny, which was still a novelty in this part of the world, the principle of the devil. Well, he said it in Afrikaans. I couldn't pronounce the Afrikaans word, but translated, it just means the principle of the devil. Although a reality of our constitutional architecture, administrative scrutiny by a public protector or ombudsman is a relatively new phenomenon. It is not surprising, therefore, that we should stumble a bit as we try to make sense of the words we put in our Constitution. What are those words? The Public Protector is established under Section 181 as an independent constitutional institution to support and strengthen constitutional democracy, and is given power under Section 182, which uses the following wording. I quote, "The Public Protector has the power, as regulated by national legislation, to A. Investigate any conduct in state affairs or in the public administration in any sphere of government that is alleged or suspected to be improper or to result in any impropriety or prejudice. B. To report on that conduct. And C. To take appropriate remedial action." Section 182 states that the Public Protector has additional powers and functions prescribed by national legislation. Section 182.3 says the Public Protector may not investigate court decisions, and Section 182.4 says the Public Protector must be accessible to all persons and communities. Section 182, subsection 5 says any report issued by the Public Protector must be open to the public unless exceptional circumstances to be determined in terms of national legislation require that a report be kept confidential. There are few that would like to have us believe that the Public Protector's powers, as enshrined in Section 182 of the Constitution, are limited to making recommendations and leaving the rest to the parliamentary processes and to chance. I must confess that I'm not one of those, and that the view shared by the Public Protector team, after many years of scrutinizing the constitutional wording and comparing the wording with wording for fellow constitutional bodies and ombudsman offices globally, is that the choice of words, "take appropriate remedial action," by the framers of our Constitution was not a mistake. I must say, my team and I draw comfort in noting that the view we take is consistent with that expressed in a document titled ready to govern, submitted by the African National Congress to the multi-party talks that gave birth to constitutional democracy. On what eventually became the Public Protector, the document says, I quote, "The ANC proposes that a full-time independent office of the Ombud should be created with wide powers to investigate complaints against members of the public service and other holders of public office, and to investigate allegations of corruption, abuse of their powers, rudeness, and maladministration. The Ombudsman shall have power to provide adequate remedies. He shall be appointed by and answerable to Parliament." Of course, I must indicate that the only thing there is he, the only problem, but the rest of it is still relevant. Why are we stumbling then? We're dealing with the challenge of transforming the state and growing into the notion of supervised exercise of public power, characterized by various checks and balances. The difficult part about administrative scrutiny is that it introduces horizontal accountability. Though we are far from Paul Kruger's labeling of judicial scrutiny as the devil's principle, we must accept that many among us are still grappling with the meaning of the supremacy of the Constitution. The good thing is that we're not walking through a forest without a trail. We've been traveling the constitutional democracy road for 20 years. One of South Africa's pioneers on this road, the late President Nelson Mandela, and his peers left several trails for us. One of those trails are the following words, open quotes. "Even the most benevolent of governments are made up of people with all the propensities for human failings. The rule of law, as we understand it, consists in the set of conventions and arrangements that ensure that it is not left to the whims of individual rulers to decide on what is good for the populace. The administrative conduct of government and authorities are subject to scrutiny of independent organs. This is an essential element of good governance that we have sought to have built in our new constitutional order. An essential part of that constitutional architecture is those institutions supporting constitutional democracy. Among those are the Public Protector, Human Rights Commission, the Auditor General, the Independent Electoral Commission, the Commission on Gender Equality, the Constitutional Court, and others. It was to me, never reason for irritation, but rather a source of comfort when these bodies were asked to adjudicate on actions of my government and office and judge against it. One of the first judgments of our Constitutional Court, for example, found that I, as President, administratively acted in a manner that it would not condone. From that judgment, my government and I drew reassurance that ordinary citizens of our country would be protected against abuse, no matter from which quarters it would emanate. Similarly, the Public Protector or Ombudsman had on more than one occasion been required to adjudicate in such matters. These words were pronounced by former President Nelson Mandela in 2000. My reading of the late President Mandela's statements leaves me with a distinct impression that he understood that administrative and judicial oversight bodies will not always see eye to eye with politicians. In fact, the reason these institutions exist is to add value by bringing to the attention of his government and politicians matters that may be unconstitutional or at odds with proper conduct envisaged by the Constitution from government or politicians. My engagement with President Zuma in the last 5 years has been along a similar appreciation of my office's role and the value it is adding to him and his government. At my first official meeting with him, he stressed to me the importance of acting without fear or favor. When I investigated a matter involving his conduct, shortly thereafter, his office assisted mine, and on conclusion of the investigation and my office following up on remedial action, there never was drama. In fact, there's never been any drama or lack of assistance from the presidency on any investigation whenever my office or myself have engaged with that office. The current drama has arisen in the wake of a confidential letter written to the President as the head of the executive, requesting clarity on matters outlined in the letter. The letter was leaked and published in the Sunday Times and the City Press. I was advised confidentially and reliably that a politician leaked it. Both the leaking and the publishing were improper. There was no public interest in such act. If anything, the actions have had the opposite of public interest by adding to a climate of mistrust and unhealthy communication. In my considered view, both the leaking and the reaction have amounted to interference in the operations of my office. They have also interfered in state affairs in the manner that, if sustained, will create a dysfunctional state. Had the letter not been leaked or commented on by actors external to the state, the President would have graciously considered my letter, as he has always done, and responded in a manner deemed appropriate. What we have now are directions of all manner, yet the head of state may not have even seen the letter, and let alone apply his mind. To me, that is a problem we must address collectively. Those objecting to the letter, which is not addressed to them, I must say that I had no authority to write it, and in so doing, I'm undermining Parliament. The truth is, my office always follows up on remedial action and has done so with organs of state, including the presidency, without drama, even when similar matters were being attended to in Parliament. Our constitutional democracy is built on the idea of complementary oversight. When we get more details or appropriate details on what we have done as the public protector, we make things easier rather than more difficult for Parliament. Even if Parliament were not happy, the hysteria and mudslinging is not the way to go. We have a great democracy with mechanisms to solve all problems within the state without external interference. The public protector is accountable to the National Assembly. The Speaker could have called me any time to account for my actions if such actions were viewed by Parliament as threatening or undermining its processes. I would have explained myself, and we would have found a way forward in line with the architecture of our constitutional democracy, which is supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law, with no person or institution being above the law. That process would have been sober and evidence-based. Untruth, such as me being, among others, a ghost in two places, Parliament, and here having a meeting with Minister Mutambi, all at the same time, would have had no place. What do we do now? The noise is not coming from government as an institution. In fact, my engagement with government as an institution has been and continues to be positive and constructive. We are currently engaging government in a dialogue on joining hands in partnership against maladministration and corruption as our focus during the 2014 stakeholder dialogue. We had a successful launch in Gauteng, where the common message was that working together is not only in the people's interests, but also in the interests of our co-dependent institutions, as our work complements each other. We also have a history of cooperation with most of the organs of state. This includes agreements to implement remedial action even before we release a report. Examples in this regard include the Department of Justice and the Department of Correctional Services. Our cooperation increasingly includes having memoranda of understanding, such as the historical one we signed with the government of KwaZulu-Natal a year ago. My request to stakeholders outside the state is to respect the boundaries between public and private operations, including the separation of state and party. From my side, I will request a meeting with the President to elicit his views and concerns with a view to a way forward that enables my office to continue to be a resource to his government and the people of South Africa in rooting out maladministration and other forms of improper conduct in state affairs. My request and engagement with the Presidency will be with a view to finding ways of working together in the pursuit of the South African dream, of a state that acts with accountability, integrity, and responsiveness at all times, and progressively delivers on an improved quality of life for all and freed potential for all persons. I'm certain that such cooperative approach is in line with the vision behind the National Development Plan, particularly Chapter 14 thereof, which requires the strengthening of institutions such as the Public Protector. The idea of cooperation between the Public Protector and government is also in line with Article 15 of the AU Declaration, of the AU Charter, actually. African Union Charter on Democracy, Governance and Elections, which commits states to strengthen institutions such as the Public Protector in pursuit of good governance, development and democracy. The cooperative governance approach is also in line with the seamless governance idea underpinning Chapter 3 of the Constitution, which deals with cooperative governance, and is also in line with Section 181(3) of the Constitution, which enjoins all organs of state to support and assist institutions such as the Public Protector in order to protect their dignity and ensure that they are effective and efficient. I have no doubt that as sons and daughters of this great nation, we are equal to the task. We have overcome worse situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Protector. We have now come to the Q&A session, and I will take questions. I think I will take 5 at a time and allow the Public Protector to respond. And I can see that there are already hands that are raised in the room. I will start from that side. I'll start in front, the front row. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are there hands behind? None. Okay. And then I'll have 1, 2, 3 in front, and then you'll be number 4 and number 5. And please remember to introduce yourselves and the media house that you represent before you ask questions. Thank you.
Amukelang Mbata from Bloomberg News. Public Protector, has there been any indication from the presidency as to whether they've acknowledged the letter that you have sent that was leaked, and as to whether the president is willing to respond as you asked him to respond in your letter?
My name is Alex, Eyewitness News. Just to ride along on that question, Advocate, if there is no response by the time stipulated in your letter, one of the greatest debates we've had is whether you can go and approach the court to enforce the aspect of
Philip Debate from the Mail and Guardian. We have speculated, of course, without your input, about the ability for you to use certain of the powers in your act, most specifically those of contempt. Have you considered using those contempt powers after the ANC's accusations? And on a related note, I don't know if you've seen the complaint filed by AfriForum this morning or reports thereof. Would you support AfriForum in their filing of a criminal complaint based on the insult provisions of the Public Protector Act?
Good afternoon, Public Protector. Karabo Mwepe from the South African Press Association. You have been described as a populist and someone who does not always paint the perfect picture when you give out your reports. What would be your response to that? And are you prepared to name the person who leaked the document? Thank you.
Right. Maybe let me proceed. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Starting with Mbata Amokelang. My office will check with the GGI team if we have received a letter of acknowledgement. Usually the Presidency sends us a letter of acknowledgement within 24 hours. We've never had any problems. We've never had problems with communications with the Presidency. I'll just ask my team to check what has happened. Indication of what his intentions are. In a letter of acknowledgement, the Presidency or any other organ of state would not indicate what the intention is. At that stage, it would be, we have received your letter and I'm applying my mind. and that will be it. That's all we expect anyway, until the day comes. Alex, from Eyewitness News, can you approach, and will you? I can, but I won't. It's standard practice for ombudsman offices to build and cement relations with organs of state. There's an African proverb that says you don't go to court together and come back as friends. The idea is to avoid going to court as much as possible. That's why I haven't been encouraging ministers to take us to court, apart from the fact that it's a waste of money. I believe in dialogue, and previously dialogue has worked. There's no reason why it shouldn't work now. What has happened in public was unprecedented and unnecessary from where I'm sitting. Karen Moon, I must just say though, thank you. I understand that your documentary was great. People liked it. I didn't get to see it because I was elsewhere. Thank you for that. Have I engaged with the President? Not after releasing the report. I have seen him, and we have had pleasant, casual engagement unrelated to the report. During the investigation, I did meet with him. I am now going to request a meeting with him. I had requested a meeting with him on all executive members' ethics act matters to just discuss a common approach, a common vision. I do realize that the President has been extremely busy. However, when he finds time, he will make it. He's never closed his door on my office. Will I tell him what to do? Will I advise him? I could advise the President, as I did in my previous investigation, but I can't tell you what I would say to the President or any other person. The whole concept of an ombudsman office, if it is supposed to work well, is really about whispering truth to power. From the day it was invented in Sweden about 203 or so years ago, the idea was to speak quietly. You notice what has happened, you tell them what you have noticed, you ask them to fix it. Only when there's resistance do these matters go public. That's why you don't get to hear about the 33,000 matters that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, because a lot of it gets resolved. In fact, sometimes we even pull back the report and decide we're not going to report on this matter because we are agreeing on everything, and then we sign an agreement on how we're going to proceed. Advice has come from my office indicating that, yes, there was a letter of acknowledgement from the Presidency. And there's always been a letter of acknowledgement from the Presidency. Phil Divert from Mail and Guardian, thank you for not leaking our report this time around. Actually, the other day I was thanking the Independent for not leaking the report, because I thought the person who had called me, who had the report, was from the Independent. So my team said, no, he doesn't work for the Independent. The people who leaked the report are with him, actually. So, powers of contempt, have I considered using them? No, I've never considered the need to use powers of contempt with ministers or members of the executive, because whenever there are misunderstandings, we find each other. We sit down, we talk. Even a subpoena is something we issued once. In my 5 years of being public protector, I've only issued one subpoena against a minister. Normally we just agree to meet and we deal with these things. About the ANC, though, contempt of the public protector, my appeal right now is that we have found ourselves off track when it comes to the road to constitutional democracy. A lot of things have happened. I have been called names. I've been presented as a ghost that was in Cape Town on the same day and sitting here with Minister Mutambi on the very same day. I was with the EFF in Cape Town. I was with Minister Mutambi here, and I wrote the letter here. So all of those things, I would like to put them behind us. All I'm requesting from my side is those outside of the state should allow the state to function. That includes political parties. If they can just leave room to democracy. If I'm writing a letter to you, just leave you to consider the letter and talk to me. If there's somebody else in the state, within the architecture of our democracy, who has to step in and correct me if I'm wrong, let that structure step in. That would be Parliament. It doesn't mean I would always agree with Parliament. As you saw with Paul Kruger's time, the judiciary did not agree with Paul Kruger and his government. So that is given that when you have checks and balances, there will always be tensions. All I'm asking for is let's manage these tensions as grown-ups. Let's manage those tensions in a manner that respects these institutions beyond our lives as current actors. People should not think that the Public Protector is a ghost, can be in Cape Town and Pretoria, or is doing all of these strange things, because the implications are for the institution, and the institution may not be trusted. It has been said that there is a huge trust deficit in some areas of our communities between the people and the state. When people are made to believe that you can't trust anyone within the state, whether they are public protector or minister or whoever or whatever they are left with no options but to use extrajudicial means to engage. We don't want that. Maybe my short answer is no, I will not institute contempt proceedings. I will observe what happens, though, because the AfriForum, as part of the community, is entitled to protect the institution, because it's not about protecting me or any particular person. It's about saying this institution is part of our accountable state. It's part of the open democracy we have signed up for. And the last one was Karabo. My iPad tried the wrong thing. It did that thing. What was the question?
Your response to the populist and the person who, and can you name the person who leaked the document?
Again, I will say, can the name calling stop? It is not democracy. People see name calling. As far as I'm concerned, I am doing what the Constitution dictates I must do. I have read to you Section 182(5) that says a report of the Public Protector. Yes, there are exceptional circumstances defined by law that make it requiring confidentiality. Has that to the public because there's protection. All parties accepted my findings and there was proper compliance. I never took it to the public. I've never seen this. I did not invent the system of going public with reports. I found it here. I just keyed into a program. She's here before, and she taught me how to do this job. No, I will not name who leaked the report. If anyone wants to know who that person is, they must engage with the media houses. It's really not my place to name people. In any event, information is hearsay. the source of the information, the two media. Just on that note, I have listened to the debate and watched the history that by this. And myself to you as the media, you have the duty to ensure a transparent state, and that we will protect you for. You have a duty to ensure that we are able to engage each other. That's part of Section 16 of the Constitution. But in your own hearts, when my office gets blamed for things you know it hasn't done, do you feel they are deepening constitutional democracy? Because there's a Gogo Dlamini in the middle of nowhere who really doesn't know who leaked the report. And when people suggest, oh, all leaked reports are from the Public Protector, it must be the Public Protector, she might just believe it. She won't be told in those conversations that the report of the SIU leaked, and nobody said a thing, and nobody said that the SIU leaked the report. The conversations that have been going on between the NPA and the presidency have been leaked, and nobody said the NPA is leaking those reports.
Thanks, Public Protector. We'll take another set of questions. There's a hand in the second row. Two at the back, 4, and 5.
The name's Angelo Coppola from China Central Television. Advocate, at what point do you lose patience and start insisting on remedial action as you've required? And secondly, if you had the option, would you be running for a second term?
Thanks, Public Protector. Lebogang Siale from Independent. I know that you have already tried to address the question around mudslinging. However, I just want to get your opinion on the accusations by the ANC saying that you have made the president your personal project and that you're targeting him and not dealing with the issues constitutionally. And then that you are undermining the Constitution and Parliament. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm from AFP. Would you say South Africa is facing a constitutional crisis?
Zunigo from Soweto TV News. I would like to find out from your Public Protector. The ANC Secretary General said you should take responsibility for the leakages of these reports, starting with the initial one of Nkandla and now the letter. Would you say maybe at any level you are at fault for the leakages of this report between you and the state? Thank you very much.
Public Protector, does the letter that was leaked, does it represent your particular beliefs on the President's response to the report? Because in that you stated that he was essentially asking a minister in a very unconstitutional and unlawful way to become a court of law and seeking to review your findings by insisting that the police minister should determine whether in fact he should pay back the money. Is that your stance? And if this is the attitude that is going to be adopted by the President going forward, what kind of damage will it do, given that you are obviously not prepared to take this matter to court? So, if that's what he's going to do and you're not going to go to court, how can the matter ever be resolved?
Thank you. Before the Public Protector responds, We didn't get the name of the colleague from AFP News. Excuse me?
Stephanie Stephanie Findley?
Stephanie.
All right. Thank you again for those questions. Let's start with Mr. Angelo Capello from China News Channel. At what point do I insist on remedial action? I always insist on remedial action. This whole fiasco has broken in an arena where we always do this. We never let go of remedial action. In fact, as we were preparing for this, I asked my team to look at our conversations with the presidency on some of the other matters involving the executive members the Executive Members Ethics Act. We follow up. Even after the year has gone, we follow up until we know it has been done. We just don't go to court. We engage in conversations with state actors because that's the way of an ombudsman. And in South Africa, we model our action around the institution of McCarthy because we think it's the closest to something like an ombudsman within our part of the world, where you have somebody who doesn't govern, has not been chosen to govern, but their role is to be the eyes and ears of those who govern and the voice of those who are governed. When things fail between the two parties, the McCarthy steps in to whisper to those in power to indicate things are not right and you can do something about it. And that's what we continue to do if people don't leak our letters. Which takes me to the second question from Lebuang Siale. Have I made the president a personal project? No. Lebuang, I have not made the president a personal project. I haven't made any state actor a personal project. You will note that I issued my report 5 months ago. My action plan is supposed ordinarily to be with me within 30 days from all state actors where I've made adverse findings. And usually the implementation period is within 3 months thereafter. In this particular case, we have just followed through what the President has been saying to Parliament, and we didn't engage in the manner we normally engage on remedial action. If we had made it our personal project, we would have been knocking at his door the way we knock in other institutions on remedial action. Have I undermined the Constitution and Parliament? No. In fact, if I had failed to follow up on remedial action just because it's the President, I would have undermined the Constitution. And those were the engagements that I had with my team. What do you do now? In fact, at some stage, my team asked me, if this had been done by Minister so-and-so, what would you do? So the idea is to be consistent. The idea is to follow the rule of law, which includes the principle that nobody and no institution is above the law. And my understanding is that the President has not taken exception, or at least he has never said that to us. It is actors outside the state that have done that, which is why I'm saying we're at a different situation than where we were with President Kruger, because Paul Kruger was himself the one who was resisting judicial scrutiny, even calling it the principle of the devil. Here we don't have that situation. We have had the President implement remedial action before regarding himself and regarding members of his executive. Is South Africa facing a constitutional crisis? Definitely no. Of course, it depends on how we resolve this matter. If the view that says administrative scrutiny is irrelevant wins the day, then yes, we would be at the same constitutional crisis where South Africa was during Paul Kruger's time, because you know how they resolved that crisis. Where they resisted judicial scrutiny, they changed the constitution to allow a particular kind of majority where Parliament could eventually override the judiciary. It's a long story, but a very interesting story on constitutionalism in South Africa. I don't think we'll reach that. I just think people should understand that we made a choice that there will be administrative scrutiny. It is not superior to judicial scrutiny, neither is it inferior to judicial scrutiny. It's just a different kind of scrutiny. It's part of what we call complementary oversight. In our constitutional architecture, public power is exercised under supervision. And the person supervising your exercise of public power does not always have to be your superior. That's why we talk about horizontal oversight. That was the crisis. That was Stephanie's question, and then Zinika's question, Soweto News. I must take responsibility for the leakage. I have answered that question, that I can't take responsibility for dishonest people. Who should take responsibility for the leaking of the SIU reports? You do know that we don't have an official version of the SIU report, but all of us know that the findings are pretty much similar. Timai. NPA, we hear every day about what's happening in the NPA. In the political parties, every day we hear every day on what was decided in cabinet. And nobody's name calls those people. Nobody pretends to be a superpower that knows exactly who leaked those documents, unless they've been told by the doctor. The person who has to take responsibility for the leaking of that document is the politician who leaked the document. They have to take responsibility. Does my letter represent my stance? Ms. Moore, you know that I don't discuss leaked documents. That's always been my stance. And I don't, because my conversation with the president was supposed to be a confidential conversation. If that conversation fails, we have means of then taking the matter to the public. As far as we're concerned, it's still a confidential conversation, and we will keep it as such, and hopefully it will be resolved.
Thank you. Public Protector, yes.
The advocate hasn't answered my second question yet.
What was your question?
About the next term.
No, the Constitution does not allow a second term for a public protector. It's a 7-year fixed term, non-renewable. As a public protector and as a member of the International Ombudsman Institute and a member of the African Ombudsmen and Mediators Association, I support the idea of a fixed term, non-renewable, because then you don't have to do anything to end the possibility of being reappointed. You just have to act in accordance with your conscience and your understanding of the law and the facts as you see them. How will the matter be resolved? We will come back to the media. The standard thing, the standard approach is we investigate. In the middle of an investigation, we advise the institution concerned if we are considering adverse findings. And if the institution agrees with us that we are correct in those findings and wants to implement remedial action, we may drop the investigation. Even if they agree with us, but we think that the investigation touches on systemic issues that everyone else needs to know about, we will proceed to a reporting stage, but indicate that government has agreed with us and government has agreed to implement. That is a standard thing. Once we have issued a report, we follow up on remedial action. That was the case during Advocate Bakwa's time. That was the case during Advocate Mushwana's time. In fact, the first remedial action that we followed up relentlessly with no drama was Nandoni Dam, which was an investigation conducted by Advocate Mushwana and had asked government to do certain things, which was including paying some compensation to those communities, building safety measures around the dam, etc. We followed on that, I think, for about 2 years without dropping the ball. It's standard practice that we do that. We follow the matter until it's been resolved. What we would then have to do, if eventually we have difficulties, we may sit down with the complainants and give them a report back and say, we've been trying to follow up on remedial action and we are struggling to get them to do the right thing. And then we present the options to the complainant. The one option is to request a tabling in Parliament in terms of Section 8 of the Public Protector Act. We request a debate in Parliament, and some of my predecessors did request debates in Parliament on some of their reports. We may also then ask the complainant, if it's an urgent matter, to consider taking the conduct of the organ of state concerned on review. So that would not be reviewing my report. That would be reviewing the conduct of the administrative conduct of government as being irrational in responding to a report that is rational. That would be a route taken by the complainant. Historically, we had promised that if complainants take somebody to court on a matter that has been decided by this office, we will join in the action as friends of the court, or amicus curiae brief. We've not been able to join many of these matters at the moment because we're poor as an institution and too few to be able to engage on all of these things.
Thank you. Can I see if there are further questions by show of hands? Is there anyone that has not asked? Okay. Okay. I will start with you and Bloomberg News and the last two on the right. It looks like this will be the last round of questions. All right. Thanks. Go ahead, please.
My name is Mehlo Mthembu. I'm a freelancing journalist. What I want to ask the Advocate Madonsela, does the President Zuma understand the damage he is causing to this country by behaving the way he's behaving? I mean, we talk about Nkandla, which is, I mean, the ruling party is insulting you left and right. The Gupta Gate, the spy scandal. Does he, in your engagement, sincerely, do you think he understands the damage he's causing to this country?
Public Protector, you say you're not at a level where you're ready to exercise your powers of contempt, but it's the second time now in about 6 months, if I'm not mistaken, that the ruling party has attacked you and in your personal capacity and your office as well when it comes to dealing with the Nkandla project or the Nkandla issue. I mean, how many times will a ruling party, or any party for that matter, have to undermine this office for there to be some sort of action that is taken to protect the institution that is supposed to guard the democracy of the country? What will it take for you to take any other further actions, if possible? And then, secondly, it was also insinuated that the EFF and the Public Protector's Office were colluding or working together, whatever it was. I mean, what is your response to being associated with political parties when it comes to reports? Thank you.
Advocate, the accusations that you go on international roadshows and undermine the Constitution, as well as give out information on issues that have not yet been reported on. What's your view on that? It's Karabo from SAPA.
Angelo from CCTV again. Advocate, what happens when your term comes to an end and there's no remedial action and there's no closure on this case? What happens then? Are you going to push to do it closed before you leave office?
Hi there, Advocate. It's Erin Bates from ENCA Online. I'd just like to read you a tweet that's come from the official ANC Twitter account 42 seconds ago. It says, "This is a missed opportunity by the Public Protector to redeem damage caused by Thuli Madonsela's conduct." Now, the language of your speech today has been very diplomatic. It's been very kind of cooperative. You've spoken about the symbiotic relationship between you and the head of state. I just want to know, how do you then respond to a comment like that coming from the head of state's party, the party of which he is also the head, that seems to put you in quite an adversarial position?
Thank you. Perhaps I should start with the last one from Ms. Eric Bates, ENCA. The ANC is a big party. I have served the ANC. I have served the ANC. I have taken arms under the ANC. A lot of the people who are insulting me, some of them are old enough to have been along the trenches with me, but they were not there when it was tough. So I'm not fazed by these people, because when there were no benefits in being in the struggle, we were there. Because we wanted a South Africa we can all be proud of, and a South Africa where we can look at our children in the face and our grandchildren in the face and say, we did all we could to have a peaceful, inclusive, and prosperous country. So that doesn't faze me. The ANC is a big party. I meet ANC members every day that support what I'm doing. The government of Gauteng is the ANC. The ministers that I've spoken about that have implemented remedial action are part of the ANC. The government of KwaZulu-Natal is part of the ANC. The only government that is not part of the ANC at the moment is Western Cape. So we're talking about a minority. But I would appeal, though, to leaders of the ANC to rein in these people that seem to have no respect for fellow human beings. I think one of the things that people need to know is that a principle that is in our Constitution, apart from Section 180(1)(3) that requires that these institutions be supported and respected, there's just a constitutional principle of human dignity. And the Constitutional Court even added the principle of Ubuntu. The hooliganism that masquerades as political party spokespersonship has to be reined in by the parties. And I'm saying this to the parties concerned because you don't throw mud at someone and remain with clean hands. When they do that, they should just know that. What happens, CCTV, Mr. Angelo Capello, if nothing happens before I go? Let's not preempt this. I have said that from our side, we follow up on remedial action. We don't get told by anyone what to do. It's a constitutional requirement that we don't get told. We follow our conscience, we follow the law, but we engage with dignity inside the state, not outside the state. And we bring the media at intervals that we choose to bring the media. Again, those who are saying, I have to be told by any political party what to do, you can't get the lions to tell the sheep where to graze. Because the lions will ask the sheep to come and graze where the lions will want to eat them. It's just natural. I'm saying this because in politics it's always known that why do we need oversight? Because we will not always do the right thing. Should it come to a point, for example, where Parliament will have to judge me, I can't tell Parliament how to judge me. Should it come to a point where a matter will go to court, I will not tell the court how to judge me. I will try to persuade the court to understand that what I did was right. But ultimately, the decision, whether I was right or was wrong, will remain with the court. Those who are criticizing me will have to understand that there is a healthy tension between political intentions and accountable democracy. It applies to judicial scrutiny. It has to apply with administrative scrutiny as well. But as Salbi Bakwa asked in respect of the Mpumalanga decision, all we are asking is human decency. Let's just stop behaving like hooligans, calling people names. It really doesn't make us look dignified as a nation. After all, the nation knows us as Mandela's children. The people were able to talk to each other despite hands dripping in blood. Why can't we do it now? I do not understand. Right. Is it Mr. Karabo Ngwepe? Is it Mr. or Miss? Mr. Karabo Ngwepe. Let's see, what is your question, sir? Oh, about international road shows. I think part of the problem also is exaggeration. I don't go on international road shows to talk about reports that I have not completed investigating. However, if I'm invited to any international platform, we're often asked to talk about case studies from our front. I mean, one year we were discussing these case studies, and somebody from Ireland told us that the worst case study they had was a guy who stole money from the parking lot. And people laughed because it was terrible. They said, don't you have better stories? And he said, forgive me for coming from one of the least corrupt countries in the world. So we share these practices in order to understand what progress are we making. But I think the case they're talking about is the Zimbabwe case, where there was just miscommunication. I have never been billed to talk about one specific case. In this particular case, I must admit, though, that my team saw initially the request was without a topic, and then I agreed. But according to the organizers, they did eventually send a theme or a topic to my team, but the team had not been shared with me until too close. And then two things happened. Firstly, I was not going to be available because I was going to be on Parliament on that day. But secondly, we requested the organizers that in the future, should we be able to come, can we not come to discuss any specific case? But should I decide to discuss any specific case? Should I ever decide to discuss any specific case? That's my decision. I can't imagine me telling Judge Pius Langa, who had to go and discuss the Freedom Charter, 50th anniversary of the Freedom Charter at Harvard, that you're not going to discuss the cases you've decided in pursuit of socio-economic rights. I can't imagine any government saying to him, you can't do that. I know that because I collaborated with him in the research for that speech, and he congratulated me for the assistance. So it's wrong to start telling me which cases I will discuss and which cases I won't discuss. But using my own ethics, I will have to determine what cases I discuss and how I discuss them. The last one is from, I started at the bottom, Amukelang Mbata from Bloomberg. Mr. Mbata, sorry, Amukelang. I think I'm confusing you with Mr. Mtendo. So you're not the last one. Your question was, will I let it go, the contempt, considering that it has had harms? By litigation. My approach today was anybody who has an interest in a functional state to think before they talk. Make false accusations, and it's up to the parties then to decide whether they will listen or not. But as I said earlier, you don't throw mud at someone and remain with clean hands. What goes around comes around. And Mr. Mbata, Mr. Mtembo, sorry, Mr. Mtembo. Well, it's because, yes, sorry. Mr. Mtembo, your question was beyond my jurisdiction, because I only have to evaluate conduct in state affairs that I can conceptualize as maladministration, as corruption, as unethical conduct, etc. But I can also comment on specific cases I have dealt with. On cases where human beings in society or in government are acting in any particular way, there are many other fora that can deal with those matters. Yes. Ms. Mbata, you asked about what do I say about being associated with EFF? Isn't the accusation ridiculous, though? I mean, just yesterday I was DA. When did I join the EFF? But I think the most ridiculous part of the accusation is the fact that it is said that on the day the EFF was engaging in Parliament, I was seen in Parliament. I mean, I would really have to be a ghost, because I was here with Minister Mtambi. They talk about an alibi. So I have an alibi. Thank you, Ms. Mbata.
Thanks, President. We are now taking the very, very last round of questions. City Press. Is there any other question? None. Is there? We? Oh, okay. We'll take the last two and afford those who want one-on-one interviews to speak to the Public Protector.
Xolani Mbanje from the City Press newspaper. Advocate, you've spoken about your feelings regarding what the ANC and its allies have said, and you've asked them, appealed for them to stop and think before they talk. But I just wanted to find out what you make of the attacks. What do you make of the attacks themselves? What are they designed to do? Since you are talking to some people within the ANC, what do you understand is the purpose of these concerted efforts where they question your actions? Thank you.
Zinuko again from Soweto TV News. Just on the issue of the politician who leaked the letter, can you be able maybe to indicate whether that politician is a member of the executive in parliament, or is just maybe a politician from a political party who is not one of the ministers of cabinet?
Yes. Thank you. Zimiko from Soweto TV News. As you were speaking, the Chief Executive Officer of the Public Protector whispered that this is a trick question. Because I indicated that I'm not going to say who did it. The City Press and the Sunday Times know exactly who did it. Why don't you put pressure on the City Press and the Sunday Times to indicate who did it? Which political party do they belong to? Which office do they occupy, if they occupy any office? Please ask them. Polani Banjo, thank you for your question as well, sir. Again, I have no idea why do people do what they do. They are the best ones to answer your question. Because a lot of the things that are being said don't need rocket science to see through is lies. I wouldn't understand why would somebody tell an obvious lie. You have to ask them. Thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of the media briefing. You will get your media packs on the way out. Thank you very much.
That was the best I've ever. Thank you. Yes.
Just a very right welcome back. Of course, you're still with SABC News.